Lorna, welcome to this interview and thank you for accepting to share your experience with us.
Thank you, Chatina. Thanks for the invite.
So tell us a bit about yourself, how you became a practitioner and what you enjoy most.
Well, I've always loved this sort of work. And I started doing past life regressions in the 90s. And then in 2008, when I spontaneously discovered that Dolores was teaching her technique here in London, I joined her class. I think I was the last one that came into her class. In fact, I happened to have been in France celebrating my birthday. A friend had invited me over, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" It showed up on the computer on the internet, and that she was coming to London. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, I got to get back to London." So I never even stayed for my birthday dinner. I flew back, got in, and then I happened to be the class demo, and so everything just really changed for me at that time. So that's how I started with Dolores. But prior to that, I had met her in the 90s when she had written the Jesus book. Because she used to have an English publisher, and so she was here, and I met her then, and I was drawn to her work in the book. So yeah, big fan.
That's nice. So you have a long experience, and this is mainly what you are doing. You're not doing anything else. So I don't know, are you still counting your sessions, or did you lost the count of them?
I don't count sessions. I don't hold on to people's stories. One thing I've learned is you've got to let your ego go. And so counting sessions and getting caught up in the ego, it's not healthy because it often takes you off track. It makes you lead the sessions because you've got this agenda of wanting to help or wanting to do things. And so I don't pay attention to that. And I tell clients when they come, all of everything that they're going to express and experience, they're stories. And all of consciousness and creation is mapped out through stories. And so I don't hold on to people's stories. In fact, I usually say, by the end of the session, I might say, was it you I mentioned this to? And so what happens is, I've got loads of stories of my own. And so I let the sessions come and I let them go. And I've learned that's how you channel the light through, so that it just comes through, it's pure, you're just in that space of being in that moment, and then you let it go.
I mean, I like this. It resonates with me a lot because the day after the session, I'm like blank. I forgot everything. But I think it's normal. You can't, really, you can't hold on everyone's story.
Well, what happens is we have different subtle bodies, they call them, if you look into spiritual things. We have what they call the mental body, the emotional body, and so forth. So when we use our emotional body or we're using our own energy and life force, we actually feel drained after the session. And we also get involved with what we think the client needs or what we think that would be helpful for them. And so I learned that in my early days. And I'll tell you how I learned that. I learned that through feeling so drained after a session that I could eat a whole chocolate cake. And I learned what I was doing was I was using my own energy, my own life force, because I wanted it to work. I wanted to help people. I wanted them to feel better. And so what I was doing was I was not allowing the natural healing process to take place because I was wanting to direct it. And so then I learned that I have to allow the light to flow through. And the other thing I learned about leading, and this was actually my training days with past life regression. So we had to do practice sessions with, people we knew. So I had a friend's friend come for a session and she was describing, so I got her in the hypnosis part and I was like, oh yes. And so then I got her to start expressing and describing what was coming to her. And she began describing rooftops and looking down at roads. And I was like, oh my God, she's in a UFO. And I was so excited. And then as we progressed, it turned out she was playing Monopoly. It was a board game. And she was looking at the board. So I'm like, you can't can't leave the sessions, because if I did, I would have taken her off into space and whatever, you know. And it's so, yeah, you learn that you have to allow the light to flow through you.
I like this example. Yeah, and the quantum healing session, it's all about you know, being there and facilitating what is the healing process of the person. So not to put yourself in the middle, it's just allowing the other person to have the space, the energy space that he needs, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I explain to clients, because, for example, I might have a fruit bowl in front of me, and I say to them, you could be describing in the hypnosis part this fruit bowl on the table and the fruits and the colors, but how do I know that I'm envisioning the same fruit bowl, the same colors, the same shades that you're describing? I don't. And if I tell myself I do, then that's where the ego comes in. And so this is why the higher you rise in awareness, the more humble you have to become, because you realize it's not you doing any of the work. And to get the intuition to ask the right question, you need to be open to that information coming. But when you're looking for it in a certain way, well, you learn that that's not, you're not going to give the client an authentic experience, because they'll leave thinking, oh, did that happen because she said that? See what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. Very important that you said that.
So in my time period, I've learned a lot.
And do you remember any particular experience that you want to share?
Well, loads of them. I mean, you could ask me on what topic. But one of my favorite ones is that people tend to think that they have to be holier than thou, they have to be spiritual, they have to be pure, they have to be something. And if they're not these things in their daily life, then they beat themselves up. And so I'll give you a little story. So there's this gentleman who, in his hypnosis session, his subconscious was showing him lifetime after lifetime where he committed suicide. So he had a pattern of committing suicide. And so then it showed him this last lifetime. I don't know if it was his last one, but it showed him the last one in the series it was showing him. And he was a wealthy landowner in some ancient time. I think he might have had sheep or, you know, land and cattle or something. And his son did something that brought shame to him. And so he's laying there in trance, telling me that I'm going to have to end my life because I can't live with what my son has done, blah, blah, blah. And so when I said, well, and what happened next? He said, as I jumped off the cliff, I realized I did not have to end my life because of what my son did. And because of that realization, I went to a higher plane in the afterlife. I mean, I love that. You know, there's always hope. So where some people are thinking, oh, so-and-so doesn't get it, so-and-so, you know, what's going to happen if I ascend? They're going to get left behind because they're still caught up in the worldly stuff. None of that matters. Consciousness is just playing out in every moment, and every moment has its richness and its opportunity. And so that's fascinating to me. But there's also some other fascinating ones. So what I like about quantum healing is that I like the healing aspect. Now, I know Dolores wrote a lot about the multidimensional and the off-planet, and I guarantee you that stuff shows up all the time. However, I love the healing aspect because I realize if you're here, you've got stuff that you want to achieve, you've got question marks, you've got maybe things you want to know about who am I, what's my purpose? There's always questions we have. They're not always about healing, although they can be to do with physical healing. So anyhow, there was this young man who, I just have to kind of draw his stories up because I tell you, I don't really hold on to them, but this had fascinated me. So he came for a session because he had fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. And it started, so everything is connected. I tell clients all the time that things don't happen for a reason. They happen because they're connected to something else. Because that phrase, they happen for a reason, is disempowering it. It makes you feel that you've no control over your life. So I say, and this is what we'll do in the pre-talk, things happen because they're connected to something else. So you'll have an understanding and you'll be able to connect more dots after on your own. But as we map out in the pre-talk what you want to achieve, you'll see the connections. So his fibromyalgia began in his chronic fatigue. It began at the end of when he ended uni and started a job, and he had a job with a manager that wouldn't allow him to do anything. So he felt kind of like he was being suppressed and suffocating effectively. And so his subconscious showed him. And so then he ended up having chronic fatigue, couldn't work for a few years, hasn't worked. And actually, he wrote me saying he's not sure if he could actually come for the session. Number one, traveling will be difficult. And number two, he doesn't think he can last for a 4-hour session. What's going to happen? And I said, well, don't worry about it. There's ways around things, because I know there's always an answer in there somewhere. So anyhow, so when he came, he had no problems with lasting. And his subconscious showed him that he had a lifetime where he was drowning. And in that drowning, he was fighting so hard for his life, struggling, that he was exhausted. And so in a symbolic way, his boss is suppressing him, that he's struggling for his life. He's trying to stay afloat in a job. And the thing is, his family wanted him to have that job. And so there's a lot rested. So it's just interesting to see what the correlation is for why we have things going on. And one of the things I say to clients is that there's a phrase, children are resilient. They're not resilient. They just have to get up and get on with it, because adults who are giants in their world make them do things. For example, if you have an embarrassing, awful day at school that everyone knows about it, you don't want to go back to school, but the adults are going to be, right, up, dressed, you're going to school. And so what do? You have to suppress those feelings and maybe that shame or whatever you're feeling, because then you have to face your friends and everyone knows what happened or what the story is, and you have to get on with it. So what happens is I find that with clients, the healing often has to do with unlocking the suppressed feelings and emotions. And also those suppressed feelings and emotions always have a decision the client makes about themselves that then continues through their life. For example, no one will ever love me, or I've now got abandonment issues or insecurity issues, or I feel weak because I could not stop my dad when he was being abusive with my mom. And then they go through life thinking I feel weak, and then they develop sicknesses around those things. And then when they see that, because their subconscious oftentimes takes them back to that moment that they've kind of forgotten about. Because what happens is, in situations, we don't really retain the memory, but we carry the symptoms. And so what the subconscious does to release the symptoms is takes them back in the memory, and they see it for what it is. So for example, they see it from that perspective of that little boy or girl feeling powerless, helpless, and then they'll access what decisions that they're making. And so then some sort of soul reintegration takes place where they reintegrate that part that is kind of stayed there stuck in the story, holding on to the feelings. So it's fascinating.
It is. It is. So I guess you've seen also these people improving after the sessions, hopefully, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, because what happens often is when we've got what we might call issues or problems or situations, we tend to think, okay, I've dealt with it now. But what happens is we've just peeled back another layer because, weeks or months or a year later, it's like, oh my God, I thought I dealt with my mom or with this issue or with this pattern. And it's because we just keep peeling back the layers. But what the subconscious can do is it can take you back to the original cause. And when you go back to that original cause, it gets dismantled. I think it's Einstein that said you can't change anything from the level of consciousness that you created it. That's a paraphrase, by the way. And so who we are when we made those decisions or when we disconnected from certain parts of our lives or our feelings is not who we are now. Now we've gained more understanding. So I often tell clients, that they're their future self going back to reclaim a part of themselves and bring them back into their rightful place, which is in their hearts.
Can I ask you some specific aspect of your way of doing QHHT? I know you have shamanic studies as a background, so I was wondering in which way you integrate the two things, if you do it.
Well, I do, because I think naturally who you are comes into play, because our early life gives us the foundation that allows us to do whatever we came here for, whether we realize it at that time or not. And so, having been a shamanic practitioner for quite a number of years, I understand maneuvering in the inner world, in the afterlife. I understand that all of life is conscious, that in the shamanic perspective, it's like the dream world. Animals can talk to you. You can do, it's like having out of body experiences, actually, or even in some degree lucid dreaming, where you're interacting with the non-physical world, but they're not always humans in the human form, that therefore they don't have a mouth that they're going to speak, so it's always telepathy. I understand those things. I understand, for example, soul retrieval, what it means when we fragment or have subpersonalities. I understand all kinds of things simply from having been a shamanic practitioner. And so what I find now is I don't have to be a shamanic practitioner for others. I can allow them to go into their own journey and access their own information and see and experience the things for themselves, because that's the only way that things change. For example, if I were to say, oh, Chatina, this, that, and that, and I gave you a reading of some sort, how do you know that's accurate? Yet still, when you go in, you'll sense and feel and know on so many different levels that that is a rich experience for you, that allows you, because it's about opening neural pathways in the brain. So as soon as you have realizations, as soon as you change your mind, you open neural pathways. So that allows you to expand your consciousness and to become more empowered and to see and know things for yourself. Because sometimes I'll have people who go through years and years of therapy, and one session, and they see and know because they go to the source rather than ruminating over how they feel or how they think or what they wish. They'll get to experience it from the soul perspective.
Yeah.
Just thrilling and fascinating, by the way.
It is true. It's on another level, isn't it?
It is, and interesting you use the term level, because I had this young man once who, he'd been a long-term meditator, like hours throughout the day for a long time, and he sat across from me saying, I want to attain other levels and so forth and so on. And his session was fascinating. It was profound in many ways. But what was so interesting was he kept going through spirals and wormholes, and these are the words he's using, and vortexes that would take him into different things and different experiences with higher beings and other experiences and past lives. And it would just be going through these different entry points. And when he finished, he sat up and turned and looked at me and laughed out loud. And he said, there are no levels. It's all happening at once. There's just entry points and wormholes and stuff. And I thought, he's right. Because when we keep thinking of levels, we somehow always feel not good enough. Like we're supposed to somehow be better. And I think that that feeling of somehow be better is maybe there's a soul prompt that we know we're here to either accomplish something, work through something, feel better in some way. There's some kind of little prompt that's saying something more is available or needed or wanted or can be acquired. And I think we might interpret that as, oh, not good enough, why can't I this and why can't I that? But I explain to clients that when they look at, by the time we finish the pre-talk, once they look at all of their stories and reasons why they want a session and how they want to feel in the future and do and stuff, they realize that they're very normal under the circumstances. Because when they look at the symptoms of what they're carrying, they realize any human who has those circumstances are going to carry those symptoms in some way, shape, or form. So it's like, wow, so it's not me. It's what life's doing and the story and my reaction to it. So it's quite liberating. And to me, those are the things that allow for permanent healing, because you're not carrying that core reason any longer that attracts the lower energies and feelings and illnesses. Because what illnesses do is they slow you down. They bring you to a standstill, effectively.
Mm.
And so there's something that's cutting you away from your joy. There's something that's disconnected you. And sometimes it's going to be in your early lifetime, or it might be in a past life. But there's something that's disconnecting you. There's a need for your energy to come back as it should.
Beautiful. No, I love this explanation. And then this is what happened during a session in which you actually find the real cause of your illness. You go back to that moment and then you see what happened, you realize, and you take your decision how you want to proceed, how you want to go on. You want to go on in illness path, in a path of, you know, not enjoying your life fully, or do you want to change something? Because obviously it's not enough to see certain things or to realize certain things. You have to make the switch. Then you have to put things into place, and it's not, doesn't have to be an effort, but still something has to change in your life, isn't it?
What changes is your awareness, your perception, your belief.
Yeah.
For example, I had a young man who didn't feel wanted by his mother, and his subconscious showed him that she was sick while he was pregnant. She was pregnant, and all of her feelings and insecurities of whatever was going on, I can't remember, was he was just drowning in them and taking them off as his own feelings. And then when it came to the birth process, there was some difficulties. And during the difficulties, there was some resistance on his part to be born, and some feeling of knowing what his life was going to be like because of all the feelings and the emotions he was carrying, which were really his mother's. Just imagine the fetus is in a soup of emotions. So if mother isn't very happy, or she has fears, or things are going on in her life, she's going to be feeling those things, and the child's going to be in that. But what his subconscious showed him, that there was such difficulty with his birth that caused the doctors and the whole team to be alarmed. But what his subconscious showed him was his mother praying, please let my baby be born. I mean, I wanted to cry. Please let my baby be born. And up until that point, he hadn't known how much his mother wanted him and loved him. I mean, it was so humbling.
This is sweet. I love it.
So our perception isn't always accurate. I mean, to be honest, I think the brain develops by the age of 25, 26, or it matures, and then it just continues developing. So we never really have the full answers, and we personalize the world until we're maybe in our 30s. And then, so we take on these things and we make these decisions. And I tell clients, until they've done deep self-exploration through whatever method, I mean, quantum healing is a brilliant one, but there's other methods for deep self-exploration. And until they do that, they don't realize that who they are and what they think of as their personality is not their personality. It's just a bunch of coping strategies and reactions that they had that they picked up along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And oftentimes they're also living their mother or their father's issues or the family patterns.
Yeah.
So once you can see that for what it is, it's easier to disengage.
Beautiful. You explained it in a very clear way.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a bit thirsty.
Oh, please. Is there anything else you want to add? Anything you want to say to people to encourage to go through the process?
Well, it's a natural process. People have a lot of uncertainty around the word hypnosis. And I think often it's because of the media and seeing, horror shows where someone's hypnotized and then they're under the control of someone else. And so I like to let people know that it's just a natural process. And whenever we're doing something that takes us internally into ourselves, for example, daydreaming, that's already going into the alpha brainwave state. We all do that. And we do that often when our bodies are so used to what we're doing, let's say going to work every day. After a while, that routine, you switch off. And so then your mind drifts into problem solving, into life were better if this, if I did that. Because suddenly it takes you into an expanded awareness. And so I explain the brain waves, which is quite scientific, and everyone can understand that. And I explain the process. So hypnosis is really just a natural process that we all utilize. And we all dream at night. And so we utilize that dream state. The reality is, if you look at what QH is, it's a three-step process. Speak to the conscious mind, allow the unconscious mind to reveal something, ask the higher conscious mind what it's all about. Besides that, everything else is just open to the client's experience. But it's those simple things. What's going on in our surface level of our mind that we don't understand, that prevents us from being present and grounded because we're distracted with all these question marks in our lives? And so the pre-talk allows that. And then the hypnosis allows the spontaneous, whatever's appropriate, to reveal itself, and it'll all be related to the pre-talk. And then you ask the higher self, the higher conscious mind, or that part of the client that knows, what is it all about? What does it mean? How do you put them together? Or whatever. Thank you. The good thing about quantum healing is Dolores opened up the multidimensional aspect, and many people feel somehow there's more to them. And some people come saying, I don't know, but I've had these weird things going on since I was a child. And then they discover that it's connected to other off-planet things, other maybe star systems, other universes, but they're always going to be here for a reason. And so when they discover what their connection is, which flows as a part of the session, then they're able to think, well, I'm not weird, I'm not strange, and it connects them to who they are. So even though they might come for healing because they have back problems or thyroid problems or something, all these other little question marks in their life play out. And when they're experiencing those things in the hypnosis part of the session, it's just very natural to them. So sometimes people come and say, I don't know why I'm here. I don't really have any problems. I don't really have anything to work on. And then as soon as the pre-talk starts, they come up with all the different reasons why they've come for a session. And it all has to do with, I want to feel better about myself. I've got relationships that make me uncomfortable that I don't understand, or something. It's primarily whoever wants to feel better about themselves sometimes get drawn to come to quantum healing. And that might be after a long route of trying to fix things in a different way. And so that's, as I always say, the ancient spiritual teachers always say, you have to have your own direct experience. You have to go within. And so they would have done it through, say, meditation, which is really technically called medical hypnosis. So any inner going really into your own inner world is some form of hypnosis. And so when you go in and you have your own experience, you can see and know things. And also lately I'm finding I'm working a lot with the gamma, at least I'm not, but the clients are having a lot of the gamma brainwave experience throughout the session. And gamma is the brainwave that has instant realizations. So sometimes their subconscious will show them something, and then they'll be, oh my gosh, that's why so-and-so and this and that, and they're connecting all the dots in that very moment. And so it's really empowering. It's brilliant. So I'd recommend people whenever they're ready. And I say whenever they're ready because I've had people who have emailed me over the years for like 3 or 4 years, and then suddenly they say, I'm ready. And
Yes.
often these might be people with issues like alcoholism or something, because you have to be ready to say I want to feel better, and so they'll reach out, and then they'll reach out another year. And so I'm just always encouraging because I understand it's timing. It's when it's right. It's when all the right pieces come together in your life for that change, that leap of consciousness to take place.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. So there's so much information.
Yes, yes, it's a lot of good stuff, good information that we're putting out there, and I'm sure that they will reach the right people. Thank you again.
Thank you.